And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So, to start off, now if you've been watching the news lately this past few weeks, the biggest news that has happened recently is more so on the financial market, in particular, how certain companies did really well while some did really poorly. Was it because of any external factors, or was it more on internal factors that manipulated the outcome that it is? Now, what I was talking about is pertaining to the company GameStop and other companies that were their shares or their values plummeted for some reasons. And obviously, as we dig deeper, or as if you were to follow the separate news, that it involves several parties, meaning online app traders as well as big hedge companies, who try to obviously take advantage of trying to generate or gain more sales, not sales, but more market value in the stocks that they're purchasing, in terms of shorting their the share so that they can maximize the value once they buy the stocks at a cheap dirt price. But obviously that didn't happen as planned, because due to Reddit message board people or individual coordinating, as mentioned, took actions asking several individuals to you know to help those struggling companies. You would say struggling, or they're on the on the brink of collapse in a sense. And for those hedge companies, brokers would reap the benefits. But that things turned around and they were able to flip the position, in terms of many individuals who recently bought stocks of, let's in this case, GameStop, were able to turn let's say a few thousand shares that's worth, let's say it's around tens of thousands of dollars, became millionaires overnight because of that. Anyway, and obviously the issue, as I mentioned, is when companies like GameStop, where their share values have plummeted, leading brokerages limiting their stocks or trading stocks so that they can control who can sell, who can buy those stocks. Obviously, this has brought became a big issue, which is it's an ongoing discussion and reporting that it's not just individuals, investors, as well as even lawmakers, or even ordinary retail investors, was involved, and is up in revolt in terms of what was happening here with regards to the Wall Street hedge fund companies. And according to those investors, obviously, as I said earlier, they coordinated with the Reddit message board so that they can send those prices back up to combat what was happening, and inflicting significant losses to those hedge funds that bet that the shares would drop. So let's take a closer look here. There you go. So as mentioned, so one of the key culprits, I don't know if you would say culprits, but one of the main protagonists here is one of the trading company here, an online trading app. It's called Robinhood and Interactive Brokers, wherein they're known as the two most popular online trading apps. So they trade, using retail investors, and all of a sudden, with what's happening behind the scenes, they suddenly restricted users from buying more stocks, but they would allow them to sell their shares. Now, obviously, this had a dramatic effect in several companies that, like I mentioned, one of those big companies that was affected was GameStop, as mentioned, which is a retail company, which was somewhat doing poorly already during the pandemic, because sales of games for consoles, for that fact, have been shifting slowly towards to digital purchases rather than buying actual physical copies. Then on the other hand, you have other companies such as AMC, which is a movie theater chain. And then you have also BlackBerry. I didn't know that they're still around. Then you have Bet and Bat Beyond and Retail Express, and you also have COS, the headphone maker, as well as Nokia and Naked Brand Group. So it was not just a single company that was affected here, but obviously they targeted several companies wherein they bet that those companies would perform poorly to such a point that their shares would drop to a certain point that it would bottom out. So those companies, those hedge funds, companies would buy it at cheap dirt prices. And obviously that didn't go as planned. Now, obviously, those people who were involved, like those individual retailers, are up in arms, as mentioned, and they're blaming, said companies like Robinhood that, was there market manipulation, there were this collusion with those big head companies. That's one, as well as said stock trading company like Robinhood here. And on a related article, the CEO of Robinhood, which is Vlad Tenev, stated that there was no, collusion of sorts, that their purpose of limiting stock trading was to protect the firm as well as protect the customers. Let's take a closer look here. Yeah. So in his interview in CNBC, they stopped the trading in certain speculative names, as mentioned in the companies earlier. It was the best interest for the company and its millions of users. Now, whether that's true or not, it's highly debatable. But again, one of the main contention is, obviously, if you try to limit the stocks or the trading, who can buy, who can sell, obviously there's going to be winners and losers here. Now, obviously, from the onset, there was speculations that the main winners or gainers here are those big hedge companies if they were able to control those those shares. And obviously that did not turn out to be. And obviously one of the ways to control the market, or in this case, from stopping from people from buying more shares, is like in the case Robinhood, they initially stopped trading, and eventually allowed people to continue buying stocks, but at a limited rate only. Now, obviously, whether this is true, whether they're protecting the interest, or is it collusion in a sense, is there a violation that was broken? And obviously, the only entity that can say that is the government. And obviously, if there's no there's no laws that was violated, then obviously, everything is in the up and up, and they should be allowed to continue to operate. Now, obviously, whether that's ethical or not is a totally different matter. And obviously, based on my perspective here, or my opinion, that there is some collusion. Obviously, this goes way back, not just with the recent events with GameStop here. What the only difference here is that obviously with what happened with individual, regular people investing in said stocks wanted to fight back. Obviously, they don't want to lose their hard-earned money with the likes of big companies who are investing other people's money to generate even more money in the end. And as mentioned, Robinhood is a brokerage firm, so they have lots of requirements, financial requirements, that the SEC are requiring them that they have a net capital requirements and clearinghouse deposits. So that the money that they have deposited at various clearinghouses, some of them requirements fluctuate quite a bit due to the volatility with what happened in the market. So it can be substantial. So they had to control certain activities. That's what the CEO is saying. Now, whether we believe them or not is a totally different matter here. And obviously, as a company, they're trying to protect the interests of their company as well as their current users here. Otherwise, can imagine if you were to lose millions of users who are trading in your said app. Now, obviously, what they're stating here is that they put themselves in a position to allow customers to be as unrestricted as possible in accordance with the requirement and regulations here. So doing or pulling said credit lines so that they could maximize within reasons is their justification here. Now, obviously, that's debatable here, and eventually they allowed their clients to sell positions but not open new ones, and in certain securities raised margin requirements and so forth. So the question here is, uh, the positions that they are in, automatically, if the client was at risk, is not having the necessary collateral. Now, obviously, they can go into the details here and look further, but at the end of the day, obviously, if you left out, investors investing in the company, the shares would continue to dip if people keep on selling their shares here. And obviously, it's not just that allowing limited buying can only alleviate the situation, which what happened here. And continuing, according to Robinhood here, they're explaining that the move was made to comply with the capital requirements mandated by the SEC here, for broker dealers. Now, obviously, they have their, I wouldn't say loophole in a sense, but they're stating that they're following the rules here. But obviously, there's some sort of rules or loopholes that they breach. That's why there was a commotion, that a lot of people are up in arms regarding what's happening with the situation here. And obviously, at the end of the day, will there be a significant consequence to said parties, the big hedge companies who try to manipulate the outcome, who try to bet that those companies would fail? How about those brokerage firms like with the likes of Robinhood here? Now, obviously, according to another article here in Reuters, that with that being said, with what's happened in this current past week, at the end of the day, there will be no people going to bars, arrested for any violations, because they are protected in the user agreement with the case of Robinhood here. All of those users who accepted, or who are using the app, have agreed that obviously Robinhood has the clout and what do you call this, the necessity to control what they can do in the interest of protecting their company, the interest of their user base here. So eventually, no harm, no foul in a sense, but obviously money has been exchanged. Some have won, some have lost significantly here. And obviously, it just goes to show, it opens up, the how the stock market can be volatile in the literal and figurative sense, in terms of using technology to aid in the stock market. Used to be you have to call in and deal with a brokering firm and place your bets in a sense, but now you can use an app here and simply, with the one press of a click of a button, you can already invest in several companies here. Now, it made it easier, but obviously it make it more harder to regulate those mechanisms. And at the end of the day, unless government can catch up with how technology has improved in the past years and decades, things like this will happen again. People or companies will always try to find loopholes in terms of how to gain an advantage here. And obviously, the big hedge companies try to bet and try to, hopefully win at the end. Well, that did not turn out so well in the immediate, but obviously, if you're looking long term here, obviously everything will balance out. So, anyway, and actually, there were, it was mentioned earlier that even lawmakers were interested with what's going on here now. What will be the end result here? Will there any be penalties here, penalized here? As mentioned, very unlikely here. And one learning lesson here, obviously, we always have to be at safeguard in terms of where we invest our money, especially those companies that are relying on hedge companies or brokering firms that would help get them more profit or more value in their shares as well. So what will happen here? Who knows? Anyway, so continuing. So shifting to the airline industry now, obviously the airline industry has been struggling in terms of how 2020 occurred, in terms of limiting restrictions from movement of traveling from one country to another. And they've been dealt another blow, in a sense that despite with easing of certain restrictions in different countries like ours as well, some in the United States, there have been a what do you call this? They'll be requiring their travelers to provide a test for before traveling, whether that traveling outside of the United States here. So this would, this will be incurred by the airline companies. Now, obviously, if this is going to be mandated with additional cost, guess what? Airline companies are bulking with this idea. Obviously, they're trying to recover from what has happened last year, and with these additional measures, that's going to deplete even further in their revenues that they're trying to recover from last year. Anyhow, but again, at the end of the day, is the testing necessary? Especially, they can say all they want that they ensure that the airplane itself or the facility is uh, uh, free, or I would say free, limited the exposure. But at the end of the day, without the test, how can you be confident with certainty that, if a person were to arrive at the airport and pass through all the checks for some reason and board the plane and were to infect the rest of the passengers here? One can only imagine the thought of, going to the point of destination, whatever countries or location that, the plane is going, and it's going to infect the rest of the population once they arrive there. Now, obviously, this is a necessary process so that you can mitigate or even hopefully minimize or even totally avoid the spread of the virus here. And obviously, according to one of the CEO here of Southwest, the CEO of Southwest Airlines, where was it? There you go. That, he's not in agreement, and based on his statement, why are they picking on the air travel, which is, they're having a difficult time right now in terms of surviving. Obviously, the cost of maintaining the airplanes, the salaries, which they have to furlough many of their employees already for the past few months, and it's an ongoing process that, if things, doesn't turn quickly for the airline industry, majority or most of their employees, in particular the pilots, the maintenance crew, the flight stewards, will be affected tremendously here. And according to the CEO, as mentioned, if you want to test people, test them, but test them before they go to the grocery store. So test them before they go to a restaurant, or test them before they go to a sporting event. Now, it makes sense that you pass the buck on the individuals, but how can you guarantee that they test before getting to the airport or boarding the plane? But from the time they took the test to the time they get the result to the time they go to the airport and board the plane, how can the airlines guarantee that the person is still safe? If it's negative, okay, let's assume it's a negative case, but it's a false negative. So if they board the plane, right, they might infect the other passengers here. And let's assume it's negative, the test. But obviously, from the time you took the test to the time you're going to the airport and boarding the plane, as mentioned, you might contract the virus during those process. So unless you took the test in the facility, in the airport, as mentioned, that's the only way you can guarantee that the person traveling to and from one location is safe or not. Like similar with, I think I discussed last week regarding Miami Games. The Miami Heat is implementing a strategy. Actually, another airport, I think it's in Dubai, that was mentioned in the article, that they're using bomb sniffing dog, not bomb sniffing, but they're using dogs to sniff if a person has COVID-19 or not. And based on research, there's a high success rate. So it's better than nothing. And obviously, we want immediate result, but the rapid testing is not as effective as one might seem. You might get a negative result, but it could be a false positive, which is kind of scary. So either way, if their interest is to encourage more people to travel again, I think the requirement of being tested, we're trying to go to different places, whether domestic or abroad. I think it's a basic requirement here. And they can complain all they want, but at the end of the day, how can you ensure that the safety of all passengers are guaranteed? Not minimized, but guaranteed. Zero chance of being infected here. And I think that's a tall order here. But unless they can come up with a better solution to address the problem here. And obviously, it's not just the airline companies mentioned. Obviously, large hotel chains such as Airbnb and other several airports said that it's unworkable because COVID testing, as mentioned, varies, and so much. There's some wide scope that you're going to cover across nationwide here or across all country here, and which is they have a point. But again, at the end of the day, what's your priority? Are you trying to save the company because you want to maximize, generate more revenue at the cost of the safety of your passengers? And it's not just the passengers, and it might infect or spread to your employees, which even an even worse scenario. If that were the case, you will have no more employees to begin with, right? And obviously, the travel industry has been hard hit with the pandemic. Travel restriction, as I mentioned earlier, has been limited or ground to a halt to limit the spread of the disease. And obviously, with the new variant of the virus has been mentioned or has been discussed, and it's kind of alarming. So extra caution has to be at the top of any company here, especially the airline industry here. Now, obviously, according to the CEO of American Airlines, Parker, stated that testing requirements for domestic flight seem like something that would be both difficult and would have us testing Americans on airplanes that we all know are safe to be on. I beg to disagree because you cannot guarantee that they're all safe, right? The only way to be safe is on the site before they board the plane. You test them and you get a fast turnaround result, and that is accurate, right? But obviously they're still debating what's the best effective way here. Unless a company can provide a faster turnaround result, like simply drawing blood tests or for a pregnancy test, right? You can use it right away and you see immediate results. Now, obviously, we're still, a long ways from there, but, it's going to take time. Now, obviously, many industries are not, too happy about this. And, I tend to agree, but obviously not at the expense of the safety of all individuals or all your passengers here. And as mentioned, that a new and more contagious strain of the virus, has popped up, and obviously, restricting movement from people, obviously affecting businesses, and as you can see in other regions like in the United Kingdom, the rise of cases in Brazil and parts of Europe, and you can include South of Africa here as well. And I think the rise in cases as well in Japan is a cause of concern here, based on last report. So you can only be optimistic that those companies can find a better solution and not just blame, it's as if that the safety aspect of the passenger is the fault of the people and so forth. If you want them to be loyal, to use your products and services in this case, you want to make sure that everything is provided. If you can spend tens of millions of dollars to provide better better lounges for your VIP customers, I think you can spend that amount in providing a testing area for all of your passengers, right? Just to give a peace of mind, if I were in that place. Anyway, continuing with technology. So, would you be surprised that, how companies are able to target their customers, especially in the digital age, right? So a digital marketing firm, in this case in Seattle, is revolutionizing how targeting ads by using a proprietary software that they're using that is data-driven. Okay? So it used to be when you're trying to market your products or service, you use typical traditional channels, right? Television, newspaper and print, radios, billboards, and all of those stuff, right? And obviously the goal here is to capture the customer's attention, to engage them, and to be able to sell a product and service immediately. Now, obviously, the immediate part is not so evident because once you see the advertisement, whatever means or traditional means, it takes time before that person realizes, do I really want to buy that item? Can I buy it right now? And so forth. Well, guess what? The company here, Seattle Digital Marketing, is a data-driven or data-first marketing agency that is based in Bellevue, Washington, Seattle. and has found a way to develop a revolutionary way for brands and businesses to track and target consumers and turn them into customers. So what one would wonder, how are they able to do that? So let's dig deeper. Okay. So the key here, or the software that they're using, is they're calling it the ad shadow. So actually, it sounds kind of ominous in a sense when you say shadowing, as in there at the behind your background when you're doing your shopping online. Anyway, so to elaborate further, what is this ad shadow? So according to the article, it's stating here that the firm is helping clients, meaning the businesses, to maximize their advertising and marketing efforts by tapping into already existing data and talking about cutting edge. So how it works is to effectively reach consumers, consumer change such as rapid basis. So real-time information. It used to be takes, could be days or even weeks before an action can be made by the consumer. In this case, you're trying to develop a faster turnaround time. So in this case, the software they develop is finding people who are already interested on a particular product or service. So what they do is open countless new doors for advertising methods. So they're trying to, in a sense, bombard you with the different alternatives. So if you're browsing online, for example, you're looking at the product, and then if you click the advertisement, it would link you already to a specific website where they can help you learn more about the products or services that you're doing here. So as mentioned here, they use targeted geolocation. So how they do that is by drawing out your internet protocol addresses or your IP addresses. So every person, let's say you're using your mobile phone, or in this case your desktop, has a specific location which they can track. Now one would wonder, isn't that data invading your data privacy here and so forth? Now what they're stating here is they can only track your IP address, but they will not be able to know who the person is. But realistically speaking, by deduction, knowing the exact location by geolocation, the address, you'll be able to pinpoint already who those persons are. But that's another debate altogether. But the point here is they'll able to determine where your location is, what your movements is, regardless if your phone is turned on or turned off here. So what they do here is they go a step further. Okay, so what they do is they capture your IP addresses as mentioned. So they can also include the person household members. So it can track who is not just the user, but also who's within their vicinity. So what they do is to hit them with an ad at the same time that are most active on their mobile device. So obviously the point of ad shadowing here is to give a more personal approach with the audience by tracking people wherever they work, go to school, shop, and attend events, and use all of those areas to tap into what their interests are. And obviously, according to the VP of Seattle Digital Marketing, Phil Anderson, stated, you're seeing real-time products and services being looked upon for, and then send it to their advertisement, and send advertisement to those customers. Now, obviously, the main difference or advantage here is the quick turnaround. So you're using algorithms, I'm assuming machine learning tools in their software to keep track of your information, similar to what the big tech companies like YouTube or even Facebook and Amazon are doing. Obviously, not just focusing on a particular service, but obviously keeping track of all of your preferences, which is kind of scary if you think about it, that they're not just looking at who you are, or not necessarily who you are, where you are, but what you do, how you do it, how often, all of those things. They're asking those questions over and over, and then passing it off to their customers by selling their information, obviously at a certain price. And obviously this is a game changer, obviously, and this can show directly to directly advertise to people when they are interested in a particular product. So it's not just getting them interested, but you already know at that point that they're interested. It's just a matter of nudging them along, in a sense, of whether what to buy, where to buy, and how much is it, and so forth. And obviously, Typically, if you're a competitor, they usually had to wait until someone click on the site or look at a competitor, which is time consuming. And obviously, if it's real time, it's immediate. So instead of waiting days or even weeks or months, you can see a result immediately here. And obviously, as mentioned here, it can serve as a sort of a interest tracking system, which is, when you mentioned the word tracking, which is, how do I say it? It's like invading your privacy in a sense, because tracking meaning they're following every footstep, whether you know it or not. Should there be a what do you call this? Should there be a limitation? It's just like, the government cannot just pick through our personal information unless, the court allows it to. But in this case, with technology, with just a user agreement with what we just discussed with GameStop, they can just keep track of all your informations in perpetuity, can continuity. So either you opt out, or unless government regulates it, which is, another another discussion altogether here. And the issue here is the ethical aspect, as mentioned. So who controls the data, and how much control are they allowed to have? Meaning, if they can know what your track is and sell your information to other companies, and we have no control on it. Obviously, we don't want control to be taken out of our power here. And obviously, what they're stating here is that they're not targeting anyone 18 and below, and anyone over 65. Okay, and they don't use it to type prescription medicine, drugs, or illegal stuff like the mentioning. But again, what's stopping other companies from doing illicit or unethical practices here? Again, I think government has to step in, be able to find that, it's a good revolutionary way of innovating your product. But at the end of the day, we need regulators here, like with like what's happening in the stock market, with the manipulation and so forth. There's no penalty. So, companies will be encouraged, or business will be encouraged to follow a somewhat shady aspect. With the name ad shadow, doesn't that convey something fishy behind it? Yeah, anyway, but the concept is sound, in terms of helping clients achieve better results and more sales here. Now, obviously, if you're a company here, you're trying to target your specific niche market customers there, no better way than using the ad shadow here. And at the end of the day, you know, you can pull the profile of your customer in terms of age, sex, and the IP address, and make the appropriate strategies on how to sell your products. Let's say you're walking along the mall. If you see advertisements, it will be catered to your preferences. So it will be tailor fit. So it's, that's the benefit of having better technology with 5G and so forth. But obviously, it's kind of scary that you're walking along, you're thinking about a particular product, and you're seeing it already, right in front of it, it's being advertised simultaneously, which is kind of scary and exciting at the same time. So, so it depends obviously on how it's being utilized here. And based on their data that they mentioned, there were tremendous success with online purchasing by increasing as much as 38% here. So you can just imagine, the temptation of other companies to take advantage of these services, and how much more can they capitalize on this. So what they did here is they started testing the software last year, and they ran testing using a local Thai restaurant. So using all the IP addresses that had launched in the past 60 days or 2 months, and then they sent a targeted ad from a competitor to all of those consumers, giving 10% discount for takeout orders. Guess what happened here? Their sales went up by as much as 28%, almost 30%, within just 24 hours of implementation. So obviously, quick turnaround in terms of getting the information and providing, the advertisement necessary to, get your customers to, call to action, so to speak, right? And that's a key part in their strategy here. So it's not just about, advertising in a sense here, but providing something tangible that, you're encouraged to, if you provide them a value in terms of products or services, and you ask them, why not purchase it here? It's readily available. You can see it. You can use it right away. Something like that. And it's one of the most effective, if there's an offer attached to it, which is, I think many companies, advertising companies, are doing right now, compared to a generic, advertisement of a particular business here. And what does this mean for future businesses or in terms of advertising? It's going to continue to innovate. If companies don't innovate, established businesses will be lagging behind, will be left behind. And obviously with technology, with AI, with machine learning, it'll keep on continuing evolving all the way into the next few years or even decades and centuries. And obviously here, broadening awareness for business, there are two key parts they mentioned here, that you need to create a brand first, then you create the advertising side. Because if there's no brand, it's difficult for you to be recognized. So that's why if you notice, several companies like Nike, Amazon, Google, all of those big companies have spent a lot of time or invested a lot of time and effort in safeguarding their trademark here, or their branding, their image, right? Because when you say the check logo, you already know that it's Nike. And then if you see the Apple logo, you know already that it's the Apple company we're talking about here. So once you have that, the brand, then the company here launches what do you call this? They launch the advertising side later on after 90 days. So, and you can see dramatic results based on their article here. Anyway, so the question here is, will more companies adopt this technology? Will other companies be able to develop this so-called ad shadow technology or concept here? And you can get immediate result here. And I think that's something exciting in a sense, and somewhat concerning here always. But the key here is, at the end of the day, like the company Seattle Digital Marketing, is innovation is the key to their success. And hopefully other companies would see that as a means to not just to stay in the industry, but gain that competitive advantage and be successful in the long run here. Anyway, speaking of technology, so we were talking of those big tech companies, right? One of the big news that was mentioned recently was Amazon's CEO, which is Jeff Bezos, is stepping down later this year. Now, it may not be the reason that you're thinking. It's not because he's doing a terrible job. He's actually doing a great job, with how well they're doing based from 2020. Now, the reason he's stepping down is more so that he can focus more on other aspects of his company, not just on the Amazon, the e-commerce platform here. So let's take a closer look. There you go. So as mentioned, the goal here why Jeff Bezos is stepping down is so that he can transition to an executive role as chairman of the board in Amazon. So he'll be relinquishing his role to the company's top cloud executive, which is Andy Jassy. I hope I'm pronouncing his name properly. Anyway, so what's interesting here, they kept this succession process quiet. There were speculation that there were two persons were being considered. So the first was Mr. Jassy, as mentioned. And then there's Jeff Wilk, who is the CEO of Amazon's worldwide consumer business. But last year, Mr. Wilk retired on 2021. So obviously, which left Mr. Andy Jassy as the lone viable person for the position. So just to give you into context, so Mr. Jassy here, or Sir Andy, joined the company way back in 1997 as the leading Amazon Web Services, cloud services, since the inception of AWS. So obviously, what's interesting here, you would be surprised that, for Amazon's popularity, one would think that the e-commerce platform is generating them millions of billions of dollars, which is true. But it's not their main moneymaker here. It's already their cloud services here, Amazon's Web Services, as mentioned here. And obviously, for the company to progress, in this case, for Jeff Bezos to relinquish the day-to-day operations in Amazon, the company, or Amazon, the e-commerce platform here, so that, the goal of Jeff Bezos is to focus on other endeavors, right? Like competing with Elon Musk in the race for conquering outer space with SpaceX and so forth. Anyway, what's interesting here is, as mentioned, according to the report, the company posted $100 billion of earnings in the quarter, and that's a 28% growth revenue for the fourth quarter, considering there was a pandemic that was happening, right? And what's interesting is that 52% of their operating income was attributed to the Amazon Web Service I mentioned earlier back last year. So obviously they want to capitalize more on their other services, in this case AWS, so that uh, Jeff Bezos would focus more on other aspects. And obviously, one of the main threats or issues that Mr. Sir Andy is going to deal with is the antitrust issue that has been, roaming around since last year. Obviously, it's not just Amazon we're talking about. We're talking of Apple, Facebook, and Google here in terms of their monopoly power in the marketplace, as well as they're also facing antitrust issue in the EU as well here. Anyway, so as mentioned, so Jeff Bezos' primary role will still be, managing the direction of the Amazon company as a whole, but he will be can now focus his attention on other projects as well. He can focus more on the Bezos Earth Fund as well as the Blue Origin spaceship to compete with SpaceX, as mentioned. And obviously, he's excited of the transition, choosing the right person, and being able to focus on other aspects in the businesses here. And obviously, being CEO, as mentioned, is a deep responsibility, which is true, and it's time consuming. Obviously, you have different aspects within the large company that Amazon is, and you have a responsibility, and it's hard to put any attention on anything else, which is right. That's why you hire someone. In this case, you get someone else to manage the business for you, since it's already doing so well here. Anyway, good luck to them. Continuing with technology, so with how Amazon is doing so well, guess which company are partnering up in the very near future? So we have here two main companies here: Ford, the manufacturing car giant, and as well as Google. So in this article in CNBC, they're inking a 6-year deal for in-car connectivity and cloud services here. So I think it's a good partnership here, obviously, for both parties. Ford is trying to expand in terms of providing better services, better products, not just building cars here. And obviously, one of their not main strengths is making better in-car entertainment services. Obviously that's why they're partnering up. And obviously Google is known for their software capabilities, the Android platform, Google Play, Google Maps, Google Assistant, all of those features. So it makes sense that to integrate that into a car manufacturer like Ford is a match made in heaven here. And obviously, Ford has been investing a lot, as much as 11 billion in restructuring plan and a major shift for the major manufacturing firm. So let's see here. There you go. So as mentioned, they have already spent millions and millions of dollars annually to develop, to maintain the system. Obviously, it's not working out perfectly. As obviously, it's not just them, other companies as well. You have Toyota, Honda, and so forth. And obviously, personally, owning a vehicle, I would rather have a pre-installed either Android app or a iOS app in my car. Actually, they should give an option to choose either way, right? And be able to integrate your mobile phone or your laptop or any devices that you have at home and bring it in your car, and it would integrate seamlessly. Won't that be nice? Anyway, so obviously Google is also using this opportunity to expand its cloud services, which is lagging behind compared to other big companies such as Amazon we mentioned earlier. You have Microsoft, and as well as Amazon and Microsoft here. So it's an opportunity for them to expand their market share here. And as mentioned, where was it? There you go. So what they plan to do here is to incorporate in their Ford vehicles as well as Lincoln vehicles will support Android, Google Assistant I mentioned earlier, and Google Maps and Google Play Store starting in 2023. Now hopefully we can see more car manufacturers implementing CarPlay, either Google Android CarPlay or iOS CarPlay here, so that be more enjoyable when you're buying a car, rather than you buy a generic type of entertainment system, then you have to purchase another one. If it's integrated, I think consumers are willing to pay extra if it's already in place. Anyway, as mentioned, so the tech giants here is using cloud to enable system for sending customer messages and maintenance in their trade-in opportunities. So obviously, it's not just in the car manufacturing that they're focused, but also in the feedback, in the back system, what do you call this? In their back system in terms of providing better service, customer service in the back end, not back system, back end in the services. And obviously, they could use artificial intelligence to improve their supply chain logistics and manufacturing as well here. Now, obviously, the partnership is beneficial for both, right? Obviously, for Ford to even increase their market share compared to other giants such as GM, Toyota, and other car manufacturers here. And obviously, this is going to benefit them in not just in the millions, but hundreds of millions of dollars, but no specified amount was mentioned here. And obviously, other car manufacturers are doing the same route. You have GM, who partnered up with Google as well. And then obviously, the point here is to improve not just the experience for customers, but also for their employees. So, it's looking promising that many big companies from different industries are partnering up with, the rumored partnership with Apple to build its first Apple car. You can imagine that, right? And Apple is in lower talks with Hyundai, so you can just imagine big tech companies partnering with different, car manufacturers. Would be interesting. You would see Hyundai and then a logo of Apple inside. That would be interesting. Anyway, and then on the other side, for Google, it's a big win for them if they're able to implement partner up with a big multinational company like what do you call this? With a company like Ford here, and obviously improving their market share compared to the other companies like Amazon, who is the market leader with 45% in cloud services, while Microsoft only has 18%, and Google here has only a measly 5%. So they still have a long ways if you want to catch up with Amazon here. And obviously, I think Microsoft had partnered with the company as well before, but obviously that didn't turn out well because Microsoft is not known for the integration of of your Android entertainment system in your vehicle and in your phones as well. Anyway, in conclusion, obviously at the end of the day, solving problems is the key to any success for any companies. That's why partnering seems logical, and it's a viable way to maximize the opportunity to reach a wider audience, in this case whether you're Google or Ford here. And in some cases they want to, if you're Google, they want to promote their cloud services. Obviously for Ford, they want to promote their to sell more cars as much as possible to not just Ford loyalists, but as well as Google users who might think na, oh yeah, I think I might buy a Ford vehicle if they have Android software integrated already here. Anyway, segueing with entertainment industry. So I think last week we were talking about some of the top grossing films last year, which is kind of ironic that Bad Boys for Life was top grossing for 2020, right? But obviously, big movie companies or movie studios are trying to find ways how to release films that would be successful, that would generate them not just millions, but hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars here. And in this article, according to CNBC, here are some of the highest grossing film franchises of all time. So I'm sure those big franchises or movie studios are going to capitalize on this. Now, whether it's going to be successful, it's a totally different discussion altogether here. Anyway, let's take a closer look here. There you go. So as mentioned here, so this pertains to global box office. So it's not just in the United States, but considering international box office here. So can you guess what's the highest grossing franchise of all time? So let's take a closer look here. So at number 13, you have Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, obviously, there has been some speculation, right? Actually, I think it was mentioned that, you know, Jack Sparrow or Mr. Johnny Depp here, who pioneered or made it popular, the franchise, this franchise was removed, right? And they're going to make a reboot, and you know, it's going to be a female-led star of sorts. I don't know if that's going to do well, and you know, if you're going to bet on something, wouldn't you bet on someone who's already been tested already, despite all the personal issue that Mr. Depp has been going through this past few months and last year? Anyway, will it succeed? Time will only tell. Anyway, excuse me. So let's take a closer look. And so number 12, you have Transformers here. Now, obviously, excuse me, it's a very popular series based on animation. Now, I only watched the first two with Shia LaBeouf there. I think the third one as well. But for the latter part, not so, you know, enticed anymore. I think they need to reboot the whole franchise already. Or restart the stories here. And obviously, Batman is a very popular franchise. You know, all the way back from Michael Keaton, all the way to Robert Pattinson, right? So hopefully, Robert Pattinson can do justice to the previous iterations of the Batman franchise here. So let's see who else. Jurassic Park is one of the most popular franchise, right? I think the first one was the best one, in my opinion. The latter part with what do you call this? Sorry, the one with Chris Pratt. You know, I like the CG part, but the story wise, you know, it doesn't compare with the one with the original one. You know, but people still watch it. You know, then good for them. Then you have the DC EU films, which garnered almost 6 billion at number 9. And then you have Middle Earth. Now I hope they don't try to push and create a new what do you call this, a reboot of sorts, because it's going to be a difficult, daunting task to replicate the success here. And I think they should wait another 50 years before they even consider rebooting the franchise. Anyway, maybe they could do a prequel, which they already did. How about a continuation of sorts with new cast of characters? I was surprised that, you know, the Fast and Furious franchise was at number 7 here. Then you have X-Men. Yeah, X-Men did well. You know, it ebbs and flows from the first one all the way to the last part. I think I like the Wolverine character's storyline there with the Logan. I think the latest iteration of the X-Men with what do you call it? What's the name of that character? Not the one with what's his name? I forgot the name. Artist. The younger version of the X-Men here. Yeah. And then you have the Spider-Man at number 5. And I think the franchise for Tom Holland, they're planned to release a third one, the third in their series. I don't know if it's going to have a crossover with other Marvel characters there. So I'm looking forward to that. One of my favorite franchises, James Bond. So I was looking forward last year to watch the release of No Time to Die, which is going to be the last film that is starred by Daniel Craig. So I'm curious to see who's going to replace him. I think there were mentions that it's going to be a female Bond next time, which I can't imagine. We have to wait to see if it would work. Then number 3, obviously Harry Potter. Now, obviously, the Harry Potter franchise, all 7 films already did really well. And then they tried to extend it with the Fantastic Beasts, right? But again, there was an issue of the second movie. The character Grindelwald, who was played by Johnny Depp again, I think he was removed already. So who's going to replace him? It's going to be a tall older there. But, you know, I think, as mentioned, I think I mentioned this last week, there were reports that they were discussing in terms of creating a TV series for Harry Potter. I can't imagine a weekly series of Harry Potter. Maybe a different character, but in a wizarding world. Maybe that would work. So we have to wait and see. Anyway, then number 2 is Star Wars. Obviously, there have been 3 trilogies already released. Obviously, the first one was the best one. The second was Then the third one with, without the direction of Mr. George Lucas here, did, yeah, so and so. But thankfully for Disney, the company, the TV series Mandalorian is doing really well. So that's salvaging what happened with the last trilogy here. Now, will they create another trilogy in the next few years? I can't imagine. But it is the business of making money, so it's incumbent upon them to capitalize on the popularity and the continuing popularity of Star Wars. And the number one franchise is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which obviously has created several films, several characters, from Iron Man all the way to, I think they're going to release a new character later this year, is Shang-Chi, which I haven't heard. I only found out when they were announcing the film releases for the next batch after Avengers Endgame here. Now, obviously, it will be at a certain point, it will be too, I don't know, diluted in a sense, or people will get fed up. Too many Marvel superhero films from both DC and Marvel Universe here now. Would people still watch it? I'm sure they would still, but the question is, when will that happen? Will it be this year, next year, or the year after that? Only time can tell. I'm sure Marvel is planning ahead in terms of what films to release, and I think one of their main problem is how are they going to continue the franchise for the Black Panther, which was highly successful with what do you call this? Who the main star Chadwick Boseman, who recently passed away last year. So sad to hear from that. But who are they going to replace it with? It's going to be a difficult and tall order, right? So people could relate to and could visualize that he is the king of Wakanda, something like that. Anyway, continuing with our story here. Where is it? There you go. Yeah, for some local news. Now, obviously, with the New Year that has just happened, and then the Chinese New Year, which is around the corner, one would think that, the restrictions would be lifted and people could start, doing their normal activities, not just the adults, but kids and family members as much. But sad to say, that's not going to happen anytime soon. And according to philstar.com here, that Manila will spend another month under the General Community Quarantine, or GCQ, which was announced by Malacanang last Friday here. So it's not just the Manila, you have Abra, Apayao, Benguet, Ifugao, Kalinga, Mountain Province, and the city of Baguio in the Cordillera Administrative Region are all currently in modified GCQ, or MGCQ will revert back to GCQ similar to Metro Manila here. And then you have Batangas, Tacloban, Davao, Davao del Norte, Lanao del Sur, Iligan City are still under GCQ similar to us here. So the question is, why is that so? So as for the rest of the country, they'll be remaining under modified general community quarantine. So one of the key questions what would wonder is, why is it that we're still under the GCQ status here? And obviously based on the article here, the country faces a new threat. As mentioned earlier, there were a potential new more infectious disease, the B117 coronavirus variant, which was first identified in the United Kingdom. And obviously, in terms of controlling the spread of the virus, we're doing a poor job, and our government has seen to fit to focus our energy into building more infrastructure rather than fortifying our health system here. And based on the article, the Philippines has so far detected 17 cases of this variant that I mentioned earlier, and there were 12 cases that came from the Bondoc Mountain Province and one coming from La Trinidad Benguet. So this is concerning. So we need to mitigate the spread, control the spread, and everything that it takes. So obviously, it's not just in those locations. You have other areas in CAR, Cordillera, and you have in Baguio City have recorded dramatic spikes in recent days, which is concerning if you think about it, because I think Baguio City is one of the many locations that are following the strict rules or containment of the virus there. And obviously, with the hard lockdown that we endured last year, which was supposed to help mitigate the spread, well, guess what? Once we reopen our borders, the virus was not contained. It was still growing, and compared to other nations, we're doing a terrible job. We are considered the underperformance of Asia Pacific region. We are ranked 79 out of the 100 nations. So we're not doing well in terms of handling the virus here. And obviously, one of the main culprits here is our failure to ban travelers from China. I think it's not just China, but other countries as well. And obviously, the insufficient testing is another, and the contact tracing of the virus is a problem here. And you need investment, and we need to spend here to be able to all of those things. And limiting the budget or even reducing the budget doesn't help our cause here. And obviously, finally, to make our point here, we're now reaching the more than 500,000 cases, and 11,000 people have already died because of the outbreak here. What is it going to take before we take it seriously or more seriously, so that we can avoid, increasing the cases to the point that, our health system cannot handle it, like, we were ill prepared to handle it last year. We should be preparing that, it's not going to stop immediately, and it may happen again sometime later in the future. So we should have a place in place so that we can be prepared, we can avoid it, mitigate it, and solve the problem, not just for the immediate future, but long term as well. Anyway, finally, for some interesting story. Now, obviously, we'll be talking about a lot of business, and using technology is one of the key tools of innovating and improving your business performance here. Now, one of the Reddits that I saw was kind of interesting. A local fisherman was able to find a very interesting way to catch a fish. And take note, he didn't use any technology or a crude technology of sorts. So let me show you what I mean. So let me see here. There you go. So you can see here. So the fisherman is catching, in a local, he's trying to catch a fish in his area, wherever he is. He or she is. I think he's trying to catch an eel here. And watch the video here. So there's a wicker basket. There's a hole in the middle. And he put a fish rod on top of the hole. And see what happens there. So the live fish is bait. And, the fisherman left. And you can see with astonishment what will happen next. One appears. And then another appears. And another. And another. And another. Very innovative, right? And obviously, you don't need anyone to monitor it. You can leave it there for some time, then come back, and you see the fruits of your labor here. And you just need 3 baskets to catch as many fish as you prefer, right? I think sometimes you don't need to spend a lot to be creative and find an effective solution here. And obviously, I find it interesting that people could still find the most ingenious way of finding a solution for a particular problem. And this is one of the ways of showing it that people are creative and can find and will find better solutions to any problems here. And then he will come back later on. So let's skip to the latter part. And voila. So the fisherman will come back. I think I came back this part. And then that's it. There you go. A happy customer there. So you can just imagine, right? If a fisherman can do that, I think we can do that in other areas as well, not just in other industries, but other ways, in whether personal or professional, either way. Anyway, so that concludes another live stream for this week. Thank you again for joining me. Where was it? There you go. Thank you again for joining me. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave your comments down below and I'll try to get back to you. So all the topics that we'll discuss today, I leave the links in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week, same time, same channel. Take care.